Well, hello again and welcome to Concert Conversations. We're very grateful to Wells Fargo Advisors for putting this program together for us and helping us present it to you. And we couldn't do that also without Maestro Mark Russell Smith, the conductor and music director of the Quad City Symphony Orchestra. Maestro, thank you for joining us.
A pleasure.
Well, we are looking forward to an amazing ending to a quite remarkable season. Only two works on the program, but each one punches very considerably in terms of impact. Let's just start with Bach. Now, or actually, you probably started the program with the Mahler, and then you had to think of something else to do. Is that how did you put the program together?
Um, well, there's the whole Violins of Hope project that plays a role in all of this. And I don't know if you're going to talk about that or if our viewers know about that. An amazing project with a Holocaust remembrance project with actual violins from Holocaust victims and survivors. And each violin has a story and tells a story of the individuals who owned it. And so it's a really powerful living musical document of these amazing lives. And it's a it travels. It's a group of violins, a group of instruments, and an exhibition that travels throughout the country. And so it's in residence in Iowa. And so we knew that it would have something to do with Masterworks VI if we chose to have that. And many, I don't know how many, that will all be made clear. Many of our violinists are going to play some of the violins actually for part of the concert, maybe the first half, maybe the second half. One of the violins was owned by, I think, a niece of Gustav Mahler. There's a Mahler connection there. And there's also a connection with the Bach double concerto. And so it all, like, I knew I wanted to do Mahler 6. And then when the Violins of Hope project appeared at kind of around the same time, programming the Bach double seemed like a very natural thing. And so we have both the Mahler connection with the violins and the Bach double connection with the violins. And so obviously the Mahler Symphony is a gigantic piece. And on many programs, that would be the only thing on the program. So therefore you need something not too long, but still something meaningful and with substance. And, the Bach double is, from another world. I mean, it's Bach, the second movement, especially, the genius of Bach and the sincerity of Bach and the great religion, the great religiosity of Bach, but also just, he's one of the wonders of the world. And so to have, and Mahler is in a very different way, but same. And so to have a substantial piece that's not too long, but very meaningful and also has connections with the Violins of Hope project will make the first half very meaningful and very powerful, I think.
Well, just a couple of words about the Violins of Hope project. It was started by a man named Amnon Weinstein, and he was living in Israel after the war. Many people were resettling to Israel as it was gaining nationhood. And a lot of the people who were coming to him from Europe had these violins, and many of them just simply wanted to get rid of them because they were of German manufacture. And these people wanted to sort of make a new start here. And there were instances where at least a few said, if you don't take it, I'll simply leave it in the street. And they're remarkably well-made instruments. He couldn't allow that to happen. So he started to collect them, but he also collected the stories of the people who were associated with them. And I know that when Violins of Hope kicked off at our wonderful partners at the Putnam Museum, one of the instruments was actually tossed out of a rail car that was making its way from France to the east, to Poland, and in that case, eventually Auschwitz. And the owner said, where I'm going, I won't need this. And the sad irony was that was often a lifeline for many of, especially the Jews, but also the Roma people who made it to a camp because these camp guards wanted music. And
Right.
so they would, if you had musical ability, that would in many cases save you. So when we come to the concert together, whether it's Saturday night at the Adler Theater or Sunday afternoon at Centennial, I hope folks will take time to read the program and learn a little bit about the instruments that we'll be celebrating. But with Bach, it's a great showcase. The work for two violins. You don't see many composers doing a concerto for two violins. What can you tell us about this musically? And will it be like other Bach works where you'll be conducting from the continual, from the harpsichord?
Yes, I will be conducting from the harpsichord, but it's a small number of players, probably 25, 26 players, all strings. It's just for strings. It's I actually don't know for whom Bach wrote the double concerto, but Bach is a person of counterpoint, which means two lines against each other, and so it's just a very natural thing, and I think a very organic, normal thing for Bach to write. Instead, I mean, he wrote violin concertos too for one violin, but for two violins, and to have that the option to have counterpoint going back and forth between the two, to have a musical conversation, is just part and parcel for what Bach's musical ethic is all about. And so it's a very familiar piece. The second movement is really a gift from heaven, just this amazing Siciliano kind of bass as far as the rhythm goes, but just the suspendedness of it and the floatiness of it, it's really otherworldly. And then we have just a kind of show-stopping finale where the violins kind of chase each other around. The counterpoint is like only like an eighth note apart, and so they're just like jumping right on top of each other. It's very, very exciting. So there's some visceral thrill to it all, and all within the kind of framework of Baroque music, where I mean, people are familiar with the harmony and with the kind of Baroque world sound. And so and for young violinists, it's a piece in the Suzuki repertoire. And so the first movement is like very well known if you grew up in the Suzuki, and my kids did, and so we played it a lot. And so I played the cello, and my two sons each played a part of the Bach double. And so for many Suzuki families, especially, this piece has a lot of resonance and a lot of familiarity. So yeah, it's wonderful. And it's never been played in Quad City Symphony Masterworks. It's like, wow. When I saw that, it was pretty unbelievable, because it's a staple in the repertoire. I'm shocked that it hasn't been played, but there you go.
Oh, well, that's fun. The Suzuki connection is going to make it even more fun. Now to Mahler. The Sixth Symphony is enigmatic in some ways, in that it was written at a very idyllic time in Mahler's life, and Mahler's life had a lot of Sturm und Drang, even though he came after that movement. And that's why I chose the background here. He was in the Dolomites with his wife and young family, and it seems idyllic. And yet the music is a little bit on the heavy side. It's beautiful music, but it seems a little more ominous and minor key-ish. How do you approach this Sixth Symphony?
Well, look, I mean, because it's not always that an artist's life is reflected in a particular work. It's not like we're having a happy time, so we're going to write happy music, or we're having a sad time, so we're writing tragic music. The last Masterworks, we have Beethoven's Second Symphony, where he was at an emotional low point in his life and wrote this ebullient, wonderful thing. So it's those two don't necessarily play each other, and this is a perfect example. I mean, this tragic symphony, it's subtitled The Tragic. It's in A minor. It's intense. It's achingly beautiful. It has one of the most beautiful love songs, the second movement. Just gorgeous, second movement, lyrical love song to his kind of newish wife. I mean, he's only been married a couple of years, and they've already had two kids, two healthy kids, one whom actually unfortunately died like a couple of years after this. But like you said, this was a very peaceful, happy summer. He wrote during the summer. He was so busy conducting and administering during the year that he just had no time to compose. And so summers were his sacred time, where he got away from everything, like basically holed himself up in a hut and composed. And so this was a very happy summer, and it's in a beautiful place. But the music reflects great intensity, great tragedy. I mean, the last movement, they're three hammer blows or two, they're like a fate, I mean, it's very fatalistic. It's super intense. It is like every Mahler symphony. It is the world. You have everything. You have a march, you have the joys, you have songs, you have a love song, you have, fanfares, you have, the highs and the lows, you have everything. And so it's an huge emotional journey.
Well, I did want to ask you about the hammer blows because Mahler was, although he was born and raised Jewish, he converted to Catholicism, but he once said, I'm truly a mystic. And for mysticism, you'll find as much of that in Catholicism as in Judaism. So he considered himself a mystic, right? And there is some elements supernatural in this, in that after he wrote it, yes, the daughter Maria dies, and that just devastated him and his wife Alma. Then he is diagnosed with some health issues that would later take his life at the very young age of 50. And then not long after, he loses his position at Vienna, which he loved,
Right.
one of his Vienna positions. And so I heard that in later versions, he omitted the third hammer blow because he didn't want to invite, more of this fate. So you mentioned three, then two. Which version will we be hearing?
You'll hear two.
Okay. We don't want
Yes.
to tempt fate either.
Right. Right.
I
So
found
that's
that
going to
fascinating.
become, I mean, that's the last word, we think. I mean, Mahler was always toying and always reorchestrating and fixing stuff up. And so very clearly in the score that I have, which is the latest musicological
Sure.
knowledge,
Sure.
the third is not there. The third is not there. So we have two big hammer blows, but not the third. But the music is the same. And so it's kind of like you're waiting, and it's like, no, we're not going to get it. And so, yeah, so that's dramatic in and of itself.
But there was a lot of good news going on in his life, despite all that. He gets invited to come to this Metropolitan Opera in New York, and for the first time in his life, he doesn't have to worry about budgets because the Met was trying to prove itself as the world's foremost and all this sort of thing. So in very short order, he gets to do Tristan und Isolde, then Don Giovanni, Die Walküre, Siegfried, and Fidelio. How would you like to put together that season?
Yeah, that's pretty great stuff.
Well, and eventually, though, he has to get stepped aside because as he goes back to Austria, to the continent, as he often did, they found some other fellow in New York named Toscanini, and it was pretty much all over at that point. He didn't didn't get to do as much there then. You said that he contains the world in all these symphonies that he does, and I totally agree. I don't know if you knew this, but his first instrument was an accordion at age 3, and that's an instrument that covers a whole lot of real estate. But his first known composition was a weird combo of a funeral, when he was 6, I should point out, a funeral march and polka.
Right.
I don't know if you were aware of that.
No, I didn't know that. But what I do know is, he grew up near a army barracks, and he grew up in a very difficult, with a very abusive father. They ran, like, I think, a pub, and so, I mean, he grew up hearing all sorts of reveille, hearing military marches, hearing the gypsy related music that was playing in the pub below. I mean, so all these, for him, I mean, he's a musical psychologist, and he knows how to push buttons, not in a negative way. He knows how to push musical buttons that remind people of things. And so in the Third Symphony, he uses a post horn because every time the postman brought a letter from your lover, you associated that. These military marches are full of sardonic irony. I mean, the way he uses all these kind of normal life things is very potent and very poignant. And the Sixth is like among the most. I mean, it's a march. As there are songs and marches, and he used those in his symphonies like all the time. Pretty much every symphony has a big old march, or more than one.
Yeah.
And so we open with that. The first movement opens with that. The last movement is just this I mean, it's rear, it's backloaded, right? We have, I wouldn't say conventional, but the first three movements are not, they're still big, but it's not like the last movement. But all of a sudden, the last movement just like takes on a whole life of its own, and it's just like this huge otherworldly, I don't know what the existential experience. It's unbelievable.
Hmm. One of the things I find interesting about Mahler's career is, unlike a lot of other composers, his early symphonies were panned by critics, but the audiences really liked them. And so
Right.
it was that sort of flip that he had, sometimes, the audiences think it's weird, but the critics kind of get it. To what do you attribute that the audiences of the early 20th century, late 1800s, they saw this and they thought, this is really good stuff, but the
Well,
critics
not
didn't.
all of them, not all of them, but I mean, for some people, it was like in the first symphony to bring in like klezmer influenced music. Like, what is that? That doesn't belong in the concert hall. I mean, the critics were more, I think, vocal about it, but that's the very thing that people did like about it. And like I said, he is a musical psychologist, and so to bring in folk music, to bring in klezmer music, to bring in military marches, to bring in familiarity into a symphony was not a thing that was common. And so I think it's relatable. It's, again, it's button pushing in a good sense, not in a negative sense. You know, giving material that people have emotional reactions to. And so now listening to a symphony becomes an emotional experience too, not just an intellectual one where you're following how the theme goes and what key we're in and all that kind of stuff. But it's a very emotional thing too. And so I mean, he's very overt in that way, and he's very, very oftentimes over the top in that. And so therefore, I think very relatable, and I mean, that's why I think Mahler is incredibly popular now, because with young people especially, because I mean, it's just out there. His emotions are there on his sleeve. It's like he's not hiding stuff. There are no secrets here, and that's what's so great. And that's why conductors like Bernstein, who's just like the ultimate extroverted person, just like revel in that. And so he's a very, I think, a very relatable, very likable composer for our day and age, because it's also, there's tension, there's love, it's everything. The symphony is the world, as Mahler said. And so there's all the highs, all the lows, there's conflict, there's resolution, there's love, there's hate, there's sardonicness, there's everything.
Well, you mentioned that he was very busy as a conductor, and when the season was done, he would retreat in the summers to this idyllic location on a lake outside of Linz in the Austrian Dolomites. Well, this season's coming closer to the end. You're still going to have some grading to do, I'm sure, at your university job at Minnesota. But is there anything you're looking forward to for your downtime in the summer? I think you found a Triceratops last summer, right?
I did, yes. Or two. Was it last two? Anyway, I can't
Maybe
remember.
that was
No,
two
I think it
summers
was
ago.
last summer. I think
Was
no,
it?
it was last summer. No, it was last summer. Well, I am taking my fabulous youth orchestra, the Greater Twin Cities Youth Symphonies, to New Zealand and Australia. That'll be in June, and then my wife and I are staying to do some scuba diving, and then actually we're going back at the end of August to the Solomon Islands for more scuba diving. Meanwhile, in July, so there's really not much downtime. It's a pretty active summer. July is when I study and prepare and have some home time and watch the Minnesota Twins. So yeah, predictions are it won't be a very successful season. They're kind of in a rebuilding, but anyway, we'll see. But summer is my time, just like Mahler, actually. Summer is the time where, I prepare for the Quad City Symphony season. If I, once the year gets going, there's just no way I could learn a Mahler Symphony No. 6 if I hadn't studied like 9 months before for, long periods of time. You just can't do that during the year because there's so many concerts, so much going on. And so summer, and 90% of my job is at a desk studying. It's not standing on the podium. It's it's all the stuff that I do in preparation for that, preparing the parts, preparing myself, preparing the score. And so that, that there's a lot of it's not downtime, but there's a lot of like solitude. I mean, we talked about it with Becky Burkhart last time. Like a composer and a conductor are both like, there's a lot of alone time that is essential to be successful, because when you're not alone, then you're leading and you're creating, and if you're not prepared to do that, and you haven't really if everything is not well studied and well considered, then you're not doing your job.
Well, listen, if we haven't sold you yet on coming to hear Johann Sebastian Bach's Concerto for Two Violins and Gustav Mahler's Symphony No. 6, we'll also find out this concert weekend what next season's going to look like. Don't forget, that's going to be announced during this Masterworks VI weekend.
Right.
So don't miss it. Get over to QCSO.org and buy your tickets now. And Maestro, with, of course, thanks to Chris Connolly and Wells Fargo Advisors, deepest heartfelt thanks to you, not just for today, but for a season filled with wonder, exploration, and discovery. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. I would say to our audience, I mean, listening to Mahler, you just have to allow yourself, time is different than our 21st century little sound bites. I mean, the word epic is overused, but it's an epic journey. And if you allow Mahler, if you allow yourself to be caught up in this incredible trajectory, and like, don't look down at your watch and don't think about, oh my God, this piece is an hour and 20, just allow the magic to happen, then it's transformational. And that's something that is so great about Mahler in today's society. I mean, this is something like, people don't sit down and take a journey for over an hour. I mean, maybe on, the Lord of the Rings or whatever, but, but I mean, as far as sitting and allowing a great artist like Mahler to take you, to transport you, it's like nothing else. And so you have to approach it with that mindset, I think. And when you do, it's just, I mean, spine tingling and chilling and fantastic, and not an exaggeration to say really life-changing. I mean, Mahler is one of those amazing composers. There's a great history in the Quad City Symphony of Mahler, and we're continuing that. And so this has been something I've looked forward to for a long time, but it's, again, something out of the ordinary. And I mean, that's what people expect from the Quad City Symphony. Luckily, nothing's ever the same, and it's pretty extraordinary. But this is just another example of that. And so, yeah, I'm just very excited to share that with our audience.
Maestro Mark Russell Smith, thank you.
Thank you.